You're listening to the Fantasy Football Podcast with Charles Barr and John Chapman.
Here we go. Episode 12. It's a biblical number. Are you ready?
That's right. We are reaching epic religious proportions this evening. It is happening.
Yeah, the number 12 means something special. It's almost as special as my Twitter follower numbers. I'm almost at 200.
Are you
there.
really?
Yeah, I am. And I'm sure most of them are robots or girls in Asia.
Still counts, man. It still counts.
Yeah, somebody cares about me. But man, dude, finally, it came. It happened. Football happened.
That is right.
And it's beautiful to see that, everything is flipped on its head week one. You feel like you have these predictions. You think you know what's going to happen. And then, bam, David Johnson to have wrist surgery. And this dude's out.
Number one overall pick in all formats. And I touted that. Not only did I talk about that, I did it. I got David Johnson in 3 of my leagues. And I am hurting just slightly. But that's okay. And I'll tell you this. There are going to be people that will still win their league, even though they drafted David Johnson in the first round. So just because you drafted him and you are heartbroken and life seems to be lost, don't worry about it. It is your time. This is the year. Here's the deal. Fantasy football is exceptional for so many reasons, but the number one reason why it's awesome is so that you can say, you remember that one year, and this is where you get to prove to everybody how great you truly are. You remember that one year I drafted David Johnson first overall, and he got knocked out in the first week, and I still won my championship? That's right. What we're here to do. That's what we're doing.
And like I've seen 1,000 times over, it's not how you draft necessarily, although it's very important. It's how you play the waiver wire, and it's how you trade. And just so you know, we've got a great segment coming up on the waiver wire, so stick around for that.
Boom. Spoiler.
Spoiler alert. And next up in our fantasy news is Allen Robinson, which a lot of guys took in the 3rd, 4th round, tore his ACL, done for the season.
Bad things. It was going to be bad for Allen Robinson anyway this year, just because of the run-heavy offense. And it was only bad because of where he was being drafted. Now, let me say this. There is still a fantasy football reliable asset here for the receiving core for the Jags, and that is Allen Hurns. And we'll talk about this, but you got to remember, Allen Hurns, 2 years ago, 1,000-yard receiving, 10 touchdowns. Who was his quarterback? Blake Bortles. Now, I don't think those numbers are going to happen, but the number one wide receiver for every single NFL team needs to be owned. He needs to be owned.
And two, D.D. Westbrook went to IR, so he is competing with Julius Thomas and then nobody else.
And I love D.D. Westbrook as a player, hate him as a human being. Again, two-time Ray Lewis Award winner, choked out his pregnant girlfriend, factually correct.
Yikes.
But here's the idea. Here in about 4 weeks, you want to pick up D.D. Westbrook. He will be the number one asset, but that's not for 5 more weeks.
Good thing to put in your back pocket. A guy who I like a whole lot, and sad to see that he's going to be injured or is injured, is Danny Woodhead.
Oh, man, he had 3 catches in the very first drive for Baltimore. And he had so many catches, he led the team in catches still, even though he went out in the first quarter.
Wow.
He looked good, but he popped that same hamstring that he aggravated during the offseason and then aggravated during the preseason. He is out 2 to 3 months. He's going to be out for a while. Now, go ahead.
I was going to say, so that sends West, the running back, this sends his stock up.
100%. One, his stock was already relatively high, but he is the person to own here. If you listen to a podcast and they tell you that Javorius Allen is the person to own, just unsubscribe from that. And I know that's me, but they are people that do not watch football games. And so I can honestly say I have watched every single snap of every single game except, and I'm a little admission here, the second half of the Dallas game was unwatchable and I turned it off because that was some of the worst football I've ever seen played by the Giants. But besides that, I've watched every single play. And the only way that Javorius Allen got carries or playing time at all was in the second half when Baltimore was already had the game put way away, and they just loaded the rock to Allen. I felt like it was a audition to see if they wanted to keep him or not, and he did okay. He had 21 carries. He averaged less than 3 yards a carry, so you can do what you will with that. But the guy to own there is Terrence West, and it's not even close. Now, if you want to own Javorius Allen, it's fine. Javorius Allen, that's fine. Buck Allen, whatever you want to call him. But do not own him over Terrence West. If somebody tells you that, just laugh and walk away, because they don't watch games, they read stat lines.
And not only does Terrence West actually look better than him behind the line, but he also is a way better third down receiver. So it's not even close.
He's got him beaten in all things, and I don't think Terrence West is actually a superb athlete. I remember whenever he came out of Towson, which, yes, I did break down Towson's film that year. I remember thinking, this guy reminds me a lot of Trent Richardson. And sure enough, guess who ended up drafting him? He went to,
Browns.
Guess where? The Browns. And they ended up cutting him, but he is kind of a jack-of-all-trades guy, which is not an insult. That's not an insult at all. He does everything kind of well, and he has a role, and he is definitely going to be playing at 19 carries for 80 yards and a touchdown whenever it mattered. And I'm telling you right now, this is a guy to own. This is a guy to own.
You know what? The week one was full of stories of sadness, and it sucks, man. There's going to be a lot we're going to talk about that just kind of, it sucks, but maybe no other sad story than, rolling snake eyes in back-to-back years with Kevin White with a broken collarbone out for the season again.
It's not back-to-back years. It's back-to-back-to-back years.
Yeah, Drake, that's the next song.
Yeah, going back to back and back. Hashtag Kevin White, track number 4, specialized with Meek Mill.
Right.
Yeah, he broke his collarbone. Like, everybody's like, oh, this is it. No, he is gone. Broke his collarbone. Usually a broken collarbone means you're going to be out 6 to 8 weeks. No, they had to have surgery and fuse the bones together. Like, this is not a break. This is a clear separation. Like, it's bad. And he's done with the Bears. He'll never put on the Bears uniform again. Most people won't recognize that he did. But you got to remember, they spent a top 10 pick on this kid out of West Virginia. He'll get picked up somewhere, and he'll have to claw his way back. But I would not be surprised if he doesn't play ever again. Not that he won't try, but in a game-time situation, it's strongly possible he will just never play again in the NFL.
Right. Or, he goes to the Patriots and becomes MVP of the league. Whatever.
Shut up.
Yeah, I know, right? So how about a savage move happening down in Houston? Deshaun Watson named Week 2 starter, and I think Tom Savage was like, you know what? They'll at least give me a game.
Nope, you get a half. You get one half. And here's the funny thing is how much Bill O'Brien was like, no, totally. Our guy is 100% Tom Savage. He's our guy. Even the what's his name? The wide receiver, Hopkins out there.
Hopkins.
Yeah, he was just like, no, he's my quarterback. That's all there is to say about it. Until the first half happened, and it was so bad. Now, here's what's crazy, and this is, you don't want to go pick up Watson on waiver wires. I have him ranked as my number 23 quarterback this week. But here's what you want to do. You want to go get Nuck Thompson. That guy led the entire NFL in targets. He had 15 targets in week 1, and he only had 4 targets whenever he stepped in at the half. And if Deshaun Watson knows how to do anything, it's to 100% load up on a wide receiver 1. And so I say congratulations. Go get DeAndre Hopkins. I have him my number 13 wide receiver this week, but I'm telling you right now, that guy, he has so much upside. I would not be surprised if he finishes top 7 on the year for wide receivers. Go get that guy. Bye.
And real quick, let's just talk about my Jags just for 1 second. I mean, I know it's week 1, but they beat out the Texans, who I believe you predicted to be AFC South champs this year.
They just have to go 9-7. That's all that they have to do, and I'm okay with that.
It's so true.
Texans, they had to fight a hurricane this week, and J.J. Watt let everybody know about that several times over. And congrats to that guy for raising all that money, but whatever. I don't want to get off on my anti-J.J. Watt rant. But love the dude. He's awesome. Hopefully he's okay and he's going to be just fine. I still have the Texans winning that division. You keep betting on Blake Bortles, and we'll see where that goes.
So I think the major storyline that we've got to talk about in this podcast is the age of aging QBs.
Aging QBs. I like the way that's phrased.
Yeah. So I think that there is a handful of guys, and I'm just going to go through a few, and you tell me the ones I'm missing, who are important to fantasy production to so many people. So if I'm going to list some of these guys, there may be some implications for the guys they're throwing or handing the ball off to.
Okay.
So number one, Eli Manning.
Ugh. Eli Manning has been terrible for 3 years, except whenever he throws to Odell. Those numbers this is nothing new if you've paid attention to the stat lines and the quarterback efficiency ratings, and you saw just how valuable Odell is. Like, Odell, it was pretty cool. He was a good teammate, and he was on the sideline cheering and all that kind of stuff this week. He showed how valuable he is. Without Odell, the Giants are maybe a 5-win team. That's just what it is.
And you know what else I'll say too is that it actually takes their defense a step back too, fantasy production wise, because that offense is putting them on the field so long and in such bad positions. They're not going to get the fantasy points that they once were.
It's the Chip Kelly effect, which you and I both know as you an Eagles fan and me a Niners fan. Whenever your offense is 3 and out consistently with no time off the clock, you hurt your defense. Now, having said that, they only gave up 19 points to the Cowboys. That's awesome. Like, the defense did their job. Eli Manning, the offensive line, and the running backs were just absolutely pathetic. And who would have guessed that Shane Vereen was going to be the running back to come out of this? Shane Vereen had the most targets for the Giants. He had 10 targets. Shane Vereen.
I think that Eli is due for an injury because that offensive line looked like it wasn't capable of, and again, it wasn't capable of stopping I want to say it's one of the worst pass rushes, but they're not dominant by any means whatsoever. This is an average ho-hum pass rush of the Cowboys. And
they hit him a lot. They were getting to him. And a lot of it's because the receivers couldn't get open. Brandon Marshall's done. Like, I don't.
He didn't look good.
He hasn't done anything in 2 seasons. And it was bad. It was just bad.
Next up is a guy who it's not necessarily age, but maybe that's a factor he's been in the league for a while, but what in God's name happened with Andy Dalton and what's going on with him?
I'll tell you this. One of the stories that didn't go out and wasn't talked to a lot about was how terrible the offensive line is for the Bengals. They are beyond terrible. They lost 2 key starters in Zeitler and Whitworth at right tackle, and it has just been straight downhill from there. And they couldn't do anything. He got sacked 5 times. They had 8 tackles for loss, the Ravens did. And not to mention all the freaking turnovers. I lost a huge lead because I waited on quarterback and got Phillip Rivers, and I didn't want to start him against Denver. And so, I was like, you know what? I'll just throw Andy Dalton in there. He's super safe. Whatever else. Nope. He finished with -8 points. 4 interceptions and a fumble. His QBR, his quarterback rating, was 0.7.
Oh, my God.
0.7.
He wasn't even worthy of a 1.
Tim Tebow almost beat him this week.
Man.
Ugh.
So real quick, though, but fantasy production for other guys, one person who I saw it directly impact was Tyler Eifert.
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 It's Eifert. It's a long I, but that's okay. It's German. He had 1 target. Tyler Eifert had 1 target, which is just... Marvin Lewis is a terrible coach.
Yes.
Everybody in the NFL knows this, but he's a player coach and he doesn't ruffle feathers. He's a yes, sir kind of guy to the ownership there. So they want to keep him, and everybody likes him. He's a nice guy. But he's an awful coach. He does not game plan whatsoever. And Baltimore's defense is absolutely legit. Now, where's their strength? It's in the linebacker core. And they were able to cover and basically blanket the middle of the field, especially with Eric at safety. They locked him up on basically if he went up the seam. Anytime, if you go back and watch film, anytime Eifert went over 8 yards deep, Weddle was right there, just ready to go. And so they schemed to take him away. Now, having said that, A.J. Green still had 10 targets. He had 5 catches for 74 yards. Go buy A.J. Green. A.J. Green's going to be a monster this year. So don't worry about him. But Andy Dalton, I hate his grandparents now, and I am basically done with his entire heritage.
Yeah. Also, would you say that there's a little bit of smoke, a little bit of fire to AJ coming in behind him?
No, no, I don't think so.
No.
No, I
No.
don't.
Okay.
Now, if this is his contract year's up next year, and so if things stay this way, and let's say they go 0-3 or 0-4, and Pittsburgh keeps winning, then yeah, I think so. But Andy Dalton, we know what Andy Dalton is. He is a manager. He's not going to win you games, but he's not usually going to lose you games. But that offensive line is what's to blame here. And if you look at the rushing totals for everybody, Joe Mixon had 8 carries for 9 yards. Like,
yikes.
Yeah, yeah.
I feel a future bet coming on. I don't want to make it yet. I want to see one more sample of data. And if Andy Dalton has another bad week next week, I'm going to go ahead and bet you in our following podcast that AJ will be in by week 10. So we'll hold on to that.
You think he'll be out by week 10? Is that what you're saying?
I think AJ will be the starting quarterback by
AJ
week
McCarron?
10. Yes, if Dalton doesn't turn around. Because, like, for instance, if he goes next week and he throws 3 to 4 picks, let's just pretend that happens. In what world, as a coach, can you stick with that guy who then has 7 to 8 picks in your first 2 games and is really blowing a lead for a division that is winnable in terms of the being second place and getting yourself into a wild card?
Right.
So, yeah. Another guy who is on the way down is Carson Palmer. I think the David Johnson loss absolutely is about to expose him. Your thoughts, good sir?
Man, here's the deal. That entire offense is designed for one person in particular, and that is David Johnson. Now, David Johnson's out. He's out 3 to 4 months. Gosh, it hurts so bad to say that. But they are going to change the way that offense goes, okay? They are no longer going to be a run-heavy offense. They can't be, because they don't have anybody. They just signed Chris Johnson, which you can take that for whatever you want. Kerwin Williams is the guy to own here. But you have to look at it. They're going to start throwing the ball. Larry Fitzgerald, he had 13 targets. Big surprise, 6 catches, 74 yards. That's going to jump up. J.J. Nelson, Andre Ellington, John Brown's healthy. His sickle cell's not acting up right now. They're going to throw the ball. Carson Palmer's attempts are going to go up, which is sad to say because he threw the ball 48 times. Arizona's season is basically done, and this is something to pay attention to because if they end up going like 2-7 or 3-10, guess what? They're not bringing David Johnson back. So they need to stay competitive. Luckily, they're in the division. They're in the NFC West, which is pretty light. They get to play San Francisco twice, and they get to play the wonderful Rams, who somehow got a win. They dominated the Rams. But guess who the Cardinals are playing this week? They're playing the Colts. They're playing the Colts.
Perfect timing.
So don't sell Carson Palmer. Like, I get that he's definitely a fringe starter, and he's not somebody that oh man, he's going to win my league and all this kind of cool stuff. But he's not a bad play. I have him as my quarterback 20. He is serviceable, but he's nothing to write home about. 2 QB leagues, go ahead and start him this week with confidence. The Colts they're pretty bad.
So there's another guy who I was wondering about, and I don't think he falls into this conversation. However, Phillip Rivers, he struggled early, and I'll say this. I'll say it now in week 1. He looked really good. He anticipated so many of the blitzes, especially in the third and fourth quarter. I was digging Phillip Rivers. However, I'll say this. He needed to put in a lot more torque to get that ball to where it needed to be. You could tell he's putting his whole body into these throws. It's not effortless for him, and I worry about him down the stretch. I'm thinking around week 9, 10, or 11, I think we could see some fall off from this guy because, again, it's not as sharp and as crisp and as powerful as it once was. Do you disagree?
No, and if you look at what Phillip Rivers has done the past 2 years, he has trailed off as the season goes on and on and on. Now, having said this, he threw for 3 touchdowns against Denver. The team he's played worse against is Denver, number 1, and the Kansas City Chiefs, number 2. Unfortunately, they're both in their division. But he finishes the number 8 quarterback in fantasy. So, you got to be okay. He tied for 8th with Derek Carr and Marcus Mariota, but still, you got to be okay. He got you 19 fantasy points, so you're not complaining about Phillip Rivers right now. Now, who does he have this week? He has the Dolphins. The Dolphins are flying all the way across the country to play in Los Angeles. And so, man, I absolutely love Phillip Rivers this week. Love Phillip Rivers.
Yeah,
and
agree.
Go get that guy. I have him as my number 8 play, which he finishes the number 8 against Denver. And now he's got on the road in Denver. And now he gets to play at home against the weak secondary of Miami, who had one of the worst secondaries of the entire NFL last year. So I like Phillip Rivers. He's not a guy that's going to win you a championship long haul. You got to get another quarterback there or trade. But hey, he's more than serviceable. That is a throwing offense, and the dude's a baller early. It's just who he is.
Yep. All right, we are here to the most important segment of the day. I'm going to call it the Waiver Firewire.
Firewire? What's up? That is
Firewire.
A fishing tackle line, Firewire. I don't know if you know that, but throwing that out
it's
there.
It's not like LimeWire, which was
nope.
For so many.
Totally different. That is Ted Cruz would approve LimeWire. Probably not Firewire. I don't think everybody got those references, but that's okay.
It's okay. It's just for me. So, man, walk us through. I mean, this is where you can take your league over. Let's say you are high on your waiver list, right? Let's say you're the 1, 2, or 3 guy. Who are some people that we need to get off of the free agent list?
Okay, so number 1, I don't care what position of need you have. Running back is the most important position, and there's a clear-cut number 1. And a lot of people think I'm going to say Kerwin Williams. Definitely not the case. It's Tariq Cohen for the Chicago Bears. And I'm going to tell you why. 1, he finishes the number 4 overall running back in fantasy, even though he doesn't line up at running back the majority of plays. He finished with 12 targets. 12 targets, 8 catches, 47 yards, and 1 touchdown. That's just receiving. He also had 5 carries for 66 yards. Go get this guy. If you put into the fact that Kevin White is out for the year, they cut Cruz, and also Cameron Meredith is out for the year. All of these things have happened in the past week and a half. And so this is just what it is. This guy is going to be the starting slot wide receiver for the Bears and the third down back for the Bears. You're getting 2 players in 1, and the kid's talent is undeniable. You just watch him play, and you're just like, this guy's better than everybody else on the field.
Yes. So that's a guy I'm definitely going to be going after. And to be honest with you, it's one of the reasons I stayed away from drafting Jordan Howard, because I kind of felt that this was going to maybe take away from Howard's carries.
No, I still love Jordan Howard. He got 60% of the snaps. The dude's a baller. Like, does not diminish whatsoever who Jordan Howard is. He's a wide receiver that plays running back.
Yes. Who else do you got going there?
Okay, I'm going to go quick here.
Okay.
Through running backs, I have 7 that I want you to get. Number 2 is Kerwin Williams, who we talked about, but it's a huge gap between number 1 and 2. You got to take a flyer on this guy. They're going to do a running back by committee down in Arizona, but Kerwin Williams is a viable play. You saw him snake a touchdown right after David Johnson got hurt, so go get that guy. Chris Johnson, who they just signed, I have as my number 6 play. So that's 2 guys off that are going to kind of make up what David Johnson was, but the talent's not there. So don't expect the same kind of production and think, oh man, it's the Arizona running back. Nope, it's a different team now. So you have to lower all expectations. Number 3 is Marlon Mack, who should have 2 touchdowns. I mean, the guy is a baller. Now, I don't know if his snap count's going to be the same once Andrew Luck gets back and they're in games competitively, because they were giving Marlon Mack a lot of carries and a lot of snaps. So I don't know if that's going to be the case whenever they're competitive, or if they're going to just leave one of the greatest running backs in NFL history, Frank Gore, in the game.
I knew you were going to say that.
He's exceptional, man. He's so great. After that, I got Alvin Kamara, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit more with the Saints backfield. Nobody saw this coming. He led the entire team in carries, snaps, and targets out of the wide receiver position, or running back position. So why I don't think that Alvin Kamara is going to be like the flash play that you have to start next week. I think he's the number one person to own in the backfield for New Orleans.
Is there any quarterbacks that you kind of see coming on? Just as a quick aside, I mean, did anybody see Trevor Siemian playing this well?
Kid looked good, didn't he?
He looked awesome.
He looked really, really good. He's not a guy that I want to rely on. I do like Trevor Siemian, but again, I have him as my number 25 guy. Are you going to put him ahead of Dak Prescott? Sam Bradford looked good. You got Cam Newton with the favorable matchup. Alex Smith's climbing the ranks. He's not somebody that I really want to rely on. If you really hate your quarterback matchup, go with it. That's fine. The quarterback that I actually like this week, Joe Flacco. Love Joe Flacco this week. He was awful last week because he didn't have to throw the ball. They only threw the ball 9 times last week because they didn't have to throw it. But they're playing against the Cleveland Browns, and he's only owned in 9% of leagues. And I even talked about this on an article that I wrote for EatSleepFantasy.com. Go check that out. It's called Smart Starts of the Week. The last 2 games versus Cleveland, Flacco threw for 598 yards and 5 touchdowns. So, very safe play that you can just go get for free.
Tuck that away. No, I'll be tucking that away for Fantasy Kings as well.
That's right. It's going to help you sleep tonight. So just keep that in mind.
Is it okay if I move on to the next section, or did you have any other guys?
Got to talk wide receivers super fast. Let me fly through
this.
A couple other running backs. Mike Tolbert, pick that guy up. He is going to be fantasy gold that you can get for free. And also Chris Carson is the guy to own in Seattle. Even though they're a terrible offense with a horrible offensive line, that guy is the guy to get. Now, wide receivers, Corey Davis is still only owned in 90% of leagues, which means he's available in 10% of leagues, which is impossible. Should never have happened. He's a top 10 pick. Go get this guy. Outside of that, Cooper Kupp you have to get. He is the primary receiver for the Rams. Kenny Golladay had 2 touchdowns off of 7 targets. Go get that guy. And got to give shout out to your boy Nelson Aguilar, who I absolutely can't stand it. Don't think he's a viable option, but the targets tell a story. You got to go get that guy.
Yeah, man. And I'm just going to say, let's give him a little bit of love and hope him. The thing is that I'll be perfectly honest. Last year, week 1, same story. He had a touchdown. He had 8 targets, something ridiculous. So we need to see some consistency from this guy.
Man, I just do not believe.
Hello?
Sorry, I just do not believe in USC wide receivers.
No, I'm with you. All right, so moving on from the waiver firewire, okay, we're going to coin that. Please don't mess with it. We're going to move on to don't drop this player. So you're going to be tempted to drop some players this week. Maybe Andy Dalton is one of those players. John, who should we just pause for a second on?
Okay, number 1, drop Andy Dalton. I dropped him right off the bat. Gingers don't have souls. Get them out of your lineups.
So true.
They don't belong in heaven or your fantasy football lineup. And I sinned. I started one in a rough situation thinking I was smarter than everybody else, and I learned my lesson. But do not drop David Johnson. I know you're upset. I know you're hurt. Keep that guy, and if you want to use him for trade bait, that's fine. Add him into a deal and say, hey, take this guy. He's going to win you your championship, and try to sell it. Number 2, Amir Abdullah. He had a rough game, but stay with him. The carries and snaps are there. He is going to be a viable fantasy starter.
This week.
At a weak position. You don't like him this week, huh?
Against the Giants? Against Damian Snacks? No, I do not.
I'm not the biggest fan, but I don't mind him as a flex play. So, yes, I'm not the biggest fan, but I've got him in my 20s range just because of snap count. I've got to take that into account. And so he's definitely somebody I want to keep around. Jamison Crowder was not healthy, so keep that in mind. Martavis Bryant laid a huge goose egg. That's okay. Ugh. But if you look back at what he's done, he scored all of his touchdowns at home. And guess where he's playing this week? Home. Start the guy at home. If you have Ben Roethlisberger, start the guy at home or versus Cleveland. So you have to know what you're doing with your players. And 3rd wide receiver, Mike Wallace. Again, they didn't have to throw. So you've got to understand that because their defense dominated, but that's not going to be the case. And my 2 tight ends, Greg Olsen, Tyler Eifert, keep those guys. They're going to be okay.
Please let Tyler Eifert be okay. Somebody who's not okay, and definitely there's been some memes and some gifs on Bleacher Report, has been all day AP. Really looking like he's just got problems all day. What's going on and what will happen?
Adrian Peterson was brought in to be a goal line back and a backup contingency plan. That's just who he was. Adrian Peterson only had 9 snaps all game. Now, in those 9 snaps, he had 6 carries for 18 yards, way to go, 3 yards per average, and 1 target that he didn't haul in. He doesn't fit this scheme. He is just there for short yardage, but they fell behind early, so they game planned him out. I have no problem, excuse me, I have no problem dropping Adrian Peterson. No problem whatsoever. Couple other big names, Eddie Lacy. Oh my gosh. Get
Drop
this
him.
guy out of my face. Do not want him. Eric Ebron, gone. Get rid of him.
Wait. Hold the phone, Jonathan Chapman. I need to talk to you about this because this is a guy you were sold on. I need you to come clean. I need you to come to Jesus in episode 12.
Let's go.
What's going on?
Okay, here's the deal. I'm sorry.
All right.
Let me apologize to all the fantasy football owners out. I believe in taking high-risk plays late in drafts. Eric Ebron was owned in about 50% of leagues. Now, early on during the offseason and preseason, he was working as the third wide receiver, the spot that was vacated by Anquan Bolden. And I thought that was the case, but guess what? As the preseason went on, there's a new rising star. His name happens to be Kenny Golladay. So in any 3 wide receiver sets, they were pulling Ebron off and sending Golladay in. Well, we saw what happened. Golladay had 2 huge touchdowns and 7 targets. Ebron lost his job to that guy, so he is no longer fantasy relevant. So I have to admit, I was wrong. I took a swing for the fences, chunked that tight end out, get another tight end in, and move on. And
well,
that's what we
that is the nice part about even what you said, though, and I'll help you out a bit to say that we were projecting him to be taken very late in fantasy rounds, so the risk was minimal towards your team,
right?
Because you could go ahead and pick up another tight end who's comparable to him, and still have the wide receiver and running back depth, which you accrued in probably rounds 5, 6, and 7 instead of a tight end.
Exactly, and that's what this is about. And if you look at the stud tight ends, they played terrible. Gronk, Eifert, Olsen, Reed, they all played awful. So it's not like if you paid early for a tight end, you're like, ha, gotcha. Jimmy Graham finishes the number 33 tight end tied with Eric Ebron, who you took 9 rounds later. Again, Eric Ebron still finished on top of Tyler Eifert and Dwayne Allen, who's another guy I think you should drop. You don't need Dwayne Allen right now. He had 2 targets for 0 catches. Hunter Henry, he didn't even play in the game very much. Drop him. And my wide receiver, Brandon Marshall. The dude is done. He's done.
He looks slow. Let me just say one more quick prediction. I think that Adrian Peterson is trade bait. Not in fantasy. Nope, in reality. I think that if they can get some kind of draft capital, and then obviously they probably would take on some sort of a cap hit, and he's given Sean Payton the death stare, tell me why not?
That was ridiculous. Well, so let's look at obvious contenders. You have Arizona. Adrian Peterson doesn't fit Arizona. He doesn't run routes. He's not a pass catcher. So if you want to bring him in for goal line and short yardage situations, which they just did for Chris Johnson, and use Kerwin Williams on first and second down, on passing situations, I'm okay with that, but I still wouldn't pick him up. Don't want him.
Yeah,
he's
I don't want to say if let's say that the injunction, the NFL gets their way, and that he wakes his way over the Cowboys. That would be kind of scary. A team, I think the Giants have to be interested to a degree.
That would work. That would work.
Yeah, and again, I think they do have, without the Odell contract, I think they do have the cap space at the moment.
Oh, and I didn't say this. Do not drop Rex Burkhead. Again, if you look at what happened, he started the game for New England. He didn't do anything with his first 2 drives. There were a few penalties. Then Mike Gillislee came in, but after Mike Gillislee got stuffed for a second 4th down conversion, they sent Burkhead back out there. So that battle is not over. Obviously, Gillislee is the guy to own there, but hold your horses. Do not drop Burkhead if you can help it, because he's going to have some fantasy viable options in the future.
I tried to tell my brother, I'll just go ahead and call him out. I'm like, dude, don't king Gillislee right yet. The Patriots have done this time and time and time again. There was a point in which James White scored 4 touchdowns in one game, and people started trading their team away for him.
And he didn't get one carry the next week.
And he didn't get a single carry after having 4 touchdowns. So please be reminded. Now, I think having LeGarrette Blount do what he did last year, that's what everyone's remembering. But here's what I'll say about, if you go back and watch Gillislee's touchdowns in the previous game, it was by circumstance and not talent.
Yep.
Now, he's a talented guy, but they would get down at the 1 or the 2, and all he's got to do is just get the ball in. And, I just, again, it was more circumstance. You're not going to see that kind of production from him week in, week out, in my opinion. There's too many mouths to feed in the backfield alone.
Yep, same. Agree.
Same. All right, man, let's move on to a bright spot. Kareem of the Hunt, man. What's this guy's ceiling? What can he be this year?
So we have seen with the wonderful coach Andy Reid, definitely one of the better coaches in the entire NFL. And I think you'd agree with that, even being a person that has let him go, right?
Yep.
Here's the deal. Kareem Hunt's game that he did in his very first game ever was the second best game of Le'Veon Bell's career. That'd be number 2. And Andy Reid has had 5 RB1s, that means finished in the top 12, 5 RB1s in the past 8 years between LaShawn McCoy and wonderful Jamal Charles. So Andy Reid knows how to use a running back, because here's the thing. He is scheme independent. And what that means is, let's say you're playing against an amazing run defense like Seattle. Doesn't matter. Why does it not matter? Because you're going to throw the ball to him. He's going to get receptions. He's going to get targets. If you're playing against a great middle linebacker like Luke Kuechly, doesn't matter. You can run the ball just fine with Kareem Hunt. The kid is a must-start week in and week out, and he never needs to come off the field. Now, they spell him. Guess how many rushes Sharkandrick West had last week? Most people don't understand this. If you had to guess, he had
4 or 5.
He had one. One
now,
rush.
they did target him in the past, which I thought was really odd, even in the goal line a few times.
Sharkandrick, they did. And a lot of it had to do because they had to get him off of the field, right? Like, you cannot play a rookie, especially like we saw. His very first carry, he came out and he fumbled, which was really interesting since he never fumbled in college or high school.
Right.
But that's just kind of what it is. And so, like, this kid, like, he is an absolute baller, and he's going to continue to play. He had close to 60% of the snaps compared to 30% of the snaps for Sharkandrick West last week. And you don't need more than 60%, especially in that offense with check down Alex Smith. Like, this kid, I have him going forward as my number 3 running back for the rest of the year, which is, it might be too high. But again, I've got LaShawn McCoy and Le'Veon Bell ahead of him, and that is it. I have him basically neck and neck with Melvin Gordon, who I really, really like this year as well.
Yeah, and Melvin looked fantastic. Against Denver, he looked fantastic.
He did. But see, I love the O-line in Kansas City more. I like the O-line.
We're about to learn a lot about it, and here's why. They're about to face my Eagles, who I feel have the best D-line in the NFL. Some people disagree.
Man, they look like it this week. Golly. They won that game for y'all.
Right, exactly. So I think that Alex Smith is going to have limited time. They're going to be challenged on the run. We played the run. We held the Redskins, although it's not saying much, but to 64 yards. But anyways, we're about to see a little bit more about Kareem Hunt. I agree with you. I think he's going to do well. He'll probably put up over 150 all-purpose yards and a touchdown. He's going to be the man.
Yeah.
Let's end our episode with, our hundreds of fans. They send us Twitter questions. We might take 1 or 2. I think we got.
I get a lot of Twitter questions in my mail, Like, they don't put it on my thing. I don't know why. They send me, like, their direct mail. I don't know if they're, like, embarrassed or whatever. But and I don't think that's the case. But I'm going to respond to everybody as best I can. And, like, I enjoy that. I really, really do. So thank you for those of you that send those out to me. It's JL_Chapman, CHAPMAN. So I want to talk about two. One of them is a redraft question, and one of them is a dynasty question. The first one is, David Johnson is out. What do I do? And this was sent by at Wizenhunty. And here's the thing. The running back position is number one, the chief position in all of fantasy sports. You have to understand, you have to have a strong running back. Now, you don't have to start them at flex, but you have to have a number one and a number two, and it's very scarce. So waiver wires is definitely the place to go. And then number two is trades. You've got to be sending out trades. And when you send out a trade, if the goal is not to send out a trade and they accept it or deny it, you are sending out a trade of a person you want to target, and you have to put in the comments, let's work together on this. If you don't like this trade, tell me what you would like. And it's a negotiation. That's all you're trying to do. You're not sending the crappy trades. Oh, I'll give you Kareem Hunt for Woodhead. That's stupid. You're a jerk, and nobody likes you anymore, and you have no friends. So you've got to be able to send trades out and say, hey, let's talk about this. Let's figure something out and come to an agreement. And it's a process. And so you've got to honor that process. So if you have to sacrifice a number one wide receiver to get a number two running back after you've lost David Johnson, that's okay. Unless you already have a deep bench and you can sacrifice with somebody like Amir Abdullah and a West, that's fine, so on and so forth. So you just have to realize you have to get somebody at the running back position. You have to have running backs.
And your dynasty question?
Yeah, the question was this, and this was Jay Harley53, who is awesome. Great follow on Twitter if you haven't already followed him. Jay Harley, Harley 53, and he said, I have AJ Green. Would it be right to trade for David Johnson in Dynasty for AJ Green? And I am saying no way. Now, if you have AJ Green, do the trade. But do not give up David Johnson in Dynasty. This is a wrist dislocation. It has no bearing on David Johnson's what he's going to do in the future. He's 25 years old. You have 4 solid years of an RB1 coming your way. AJ Green, 29 years old. He's never finished as the wide receiver one. Is he elite? Sure. I have no problem with that. But we've already seen what David Johnson can do. You've got to be patient. You got to wait a year, and you got to bite the bullet. Now, would I trade David Johnson for Odell? Yeah. Antonio Brown? Yes. But not for A.J. Green. Mike Evans? Yes. Even though I like this year A.J. Green more than Mike Evans is 24. So you're getting an extra 5 years on a comparable wide receiver. So don't go and get rid of David Johnson in Dynasty. You just got to bite the bullet unless you get a ridiculous offer, which you're probably not getting.
Word to the big bird. All right, those are wise words from John Chapman.
What's up?
And what's up? And you can follow this dude on Twitter, man. What's your Twitter handle?
JL_Chapman, CHAPMAN. And I put articles out on Eat Sleep Fantasy, which I talked about. Go check them out. There's lots of good stuff over there.
And I am host Chuck B on Twitter.
Oh,
and
hold on.
You know,
we have not talked about. I need to bring this up because I lost.
Okay. Yeah.
We had a bet last week. Do you even remember the bet, Charles? Because if you don't, I might change the terms.
No. I said that that the combined quarterback fantasy production between Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson would finish outside the top 5, and I firmly won that.
Yeah, you did. They finished number 9. Number 9 quarterback game. That was Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. That offensive line for Seattle is worse than advertised, turns out. Not just the worst in the NFL. It's actually worse than that. And so I will be, tomorrow night, I will be filming live on YouTube Live. I'm going to send out the link on mine and Charles's Twitter. It's probably going to be around 8 p.m. Pacific time. So that's 10 p.m. Central and 11 p.m. Man, it's rough figuring this out. Eastern.
Yikes.
I have to do a spoonful of crushed red pepper Yeah, and so we're gonna put video out there. I'm a man who pays his debts. I'm a Lannister, and yeah, that's gonna happen tomorrow. So stay tuned Wednesday night, and you get to enjoy the wonders of betting, even though you have nothing at stake.
I think tomorrow night too we can go over where we are currently on our bets as well. I think that'd be kind of fun.
Down.
So,
I'm 100% down. So, man, hope you enjoyed this. And if you're wondering who to drop in certain situations, man, you want to pick up this guy or I don't want to pick up this guy, reach out on Twitter. We'll answer those questions for you. We're here for you guys. We want you to win some championships and be able to enjoy yourself. So, don't hesitate to reach out.
see you week 2.
Yeah, go win some games. And we
Peace.
are out. Peace.